Hello, BCC. I'm outside of Block's brand new Hispanic Outreach Center with Chris Staitzer. And on August 5th, BCC will be working here to help prepare this building for its future. And we get to be in on the ground level of what God's going to do in and through this ministry. So, Chris, can you just share a little bit with us about what we'll be doing here on August 5th?
Yeah, this is the brand new Hispanic Outreach building for Block, and we're really excited about it. First, it's a huge building, and we could put you guys on this for a month. We'd still have work to do, but here's the couple things that we need from you. Number one is just scraping old paint off, putting new paint on, taking out the old, putting in some of the new, whether that be kitchen equipment, chairs, tables, things of that nature. There's going to be a decent amount of painting. We're going to be working on a couple of classrooms so that we can get a couple of them up and running so that we can start putting in some services right away. Our goal is that there will at least be a tangible difference that you'll be able to see directly. Kids will be able to jump in, whoever, men, women, everybody, all ages. We're really excited to have you here. I'm grateful to partner with you.
So we're looking forward to serving with you, and I'm looking forward to what God's going to do through the Hispanic outreach that'll happen in this building right here on the west side of Cincinnati.
Good morning. How we doing? For those of you who have not met me, and I think a lot of you have, my name's Chris Staitzer. I work with Block Ministries for the past 13 years in Price Hill and beyond, and it's an honor and a privilege to serve alongside you and partner alongside you. So the west side, in particular, Price Hill, has been my home for 15 years, and this feels like home to me now. And I'm a transplant. I understand that. But when I talk about where I'm originally from, there's things that you'll get a pretty good grasp of what I'm about to say and where I'm from by just the context of what I'm about to say. So, my dad had some friends, and there was Steve, and there was Donnie, and there was Jerry, and things like that. But I'm going to tell you a couple of the other names. One of them was Butch Russell. Okay, the other one was Buddy. And Buddy drove a Jeep. And then the last one, and I am not making this up, his name was Monkey. And his last name makes it even better, Monkey Ancient. Monkey Ancient. If that tells you a little bit of the context of where I'm from without telling you exactly where I'm from, my dad is he's a pretty funny guy. He's really introverted. I'm way more extroverted than my dad. So he's one of those guys that would sit in the back of the room and he'd say things, and then like you would be on a car ride home and be like, that was super funny, you know? And so here's a few of my sayings that my dad had, and I'm not trying to be offensive, and honestly, I'm churching some of them up, all right? So you can have that. When my kids were little, one of my sons, Markel, he was just a thick boy. And he'd say this, if that boy had to haul butt, he'd have to make 2 trips. When he, changing diapers, a couple of our kids, just little kids, and you're changing diapers, and he said this, if that boy swallowed a quarter, he'd poop out 50 cents. I don't. So, some of these, I've told you, he's funny. One of them, I'm saying, I don't even know why I'm saying this, but he'd say something about Dorothy on a broomstick. I don't get it. Be like, we'd be out of here like Dorothy on a broomstick. I don't know what that even means, but it feels like it's some country saying that. But one thing I do know what he said, we're hanging in there like a hair on a biscuit, or hair in a biscuit. If you've ever heard that one, I guess if you're making biscuits, hair can stick to biscuits. And, or we're finer than frog hair split 3 ways. If you've heard that one, there's a lot of things about being hot or not appropriate, inappropriate, or there'd be things like how hard you're working. We're working as hard as a one-legged man in a butt-kicking competition. You think about that one for a minute. When my brother, I had an older brother who just struggled to make good choices, and and so he made a lot of bad choices. And he'd say, son, there's a road with dog crap on it, and there's a road that doesn't, and you seem to always take the road that's full of dog crap. Can we not do that? And I thought, That's out of Proverbs somewhere, like that's just godly wisdom. And honestly, he's not wrong, right? Like, don't go down the road with dog poop on it. I don't, there are a couple other ones that he'd say that were pretty funny. Oh gosh, one of them that he would say, and this is, if you're into taking notes, you just need to write this one down, fellas. He'd say, a good-looking tree don't need very many ornaments. You just let that one sit for a little bit, right, fellas? All right, so you just need to look good and sit back, all right? My dad, the gene pool is pretty closely tied. We don't have much hair. And my dad had the same, I don't even want to call it a barber, but he had the same haircut lady for like 45 years. Her name is Lynn. And Lynn drove a school bus in the mornings and the afternoons, and then when she was not driving a school bus, she would cut hair, and she lived out in the country, and my dad roofed her house. So he knew how to put, shingles on, and he roofed a house, and he did that for her, so she would charge him like maybe $5, I don't know if it was $3 or $5, for 45 years. That's how much he's paid for a haircut, and so he would take me to go get my haircut there. And I can remember growing up, we were going in to see Lynn, and my dad gets his hair cut, and he's got like 5 hairs. So we have different philosophies. Mine was, you can't hold on to what you don't have, right? His was, you hold on for dear life, for everything you got. So I guess he paid like $1 per hair that they had to cut, So my dad gets his hair cut, and I go up and I said, Lynn, I'll take exactly what my dad's got. And I'm a little kid, right? It's funny, but there is something in us that wants to be parented, fathered, mothered. There's something in us that's built in us to want to be like the person who is raising us, to glean from that. I find it really interesting in the Gospel of John. Just in the Gospel of John, there are 150 references to Jesus referring to life with the Father. 150 references in the Gospel of John in regards to life with the Father, and that's what we're going to talk about today. If there's anything you want to take away from today, here it is. Live into being a son or daughter, not an orphan. Live into being a son or a daughter, not an orphan. I'm not talking necessarily about you grew up in an orphanage, or that you had no home, a place to call home. I am, though, talking about that spiritually speaking. Live into being a son or a daughter, not an orphan. If you have a Bible, open up to Matthew 3. And we're going to look at really one verse pretty in depth and draw a few things out of that. This is Matthew 3, verses 16 and 17. And just to give you a little background to this, there's very little information from Jesus' birth to the age of 30. We have a little bit, but there's not much. Jesus is raised in a Jewish home, small town, and in Nazareth, and he would have been raised under the family's mission. He would have been probably worked with his father, and they would have grew up in the family business, and that's what Jews did. And so he is, we have one story, really, when he's about 12 years old. And after that, it's when he's 30. And he went from, even that, it's 30 to 33 when his ministry takes place. We have really not much of Jesus' life is recorded. So he's 30 years old, and he has been subject to his parents' mission for the first 30 years. And now he is going to be baptized. And he goes to his cousin John, who's John the Baptist, and he wants to be baptized. And even John knows Jesus is better than I am. He knows this. But yet Jesus still puts himself under the authority of his cousin John, and he gets baptized. And he comes out of the water, and God speaks. And this is what he says. He says, "This is my son." It's in verse 16. "This is my son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased." This is my son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. I just want to look at this first part. This is my son. He refers to him as his son, and I'll just take that for what it is, but he is accepted. This is my son. He's accepted. You're accepted for who you are, not for who you're not. As a son, as a daughter, not as an orphan. You're not a spiritual servant with a spiritual boss. You are a son or a daughter. This isn't natural. I think when Adam and Eve and we sinners in the world, this doesn't become a natural thing necessarily to lean into. Walking and living as a son or a daughter in the kingdom. It's something we have to live into. It's something we have to learn, not to be at a distance, but actually to be really close, to be very intimate, and Jesus lives that life. I think the more you understand that God likes you, He accepts you, the easier it is for you to be more okay with just people liking you for you. If you're weird and nerdy, because we all are, be that. If you like certain things no one else does, who cares? Like it. That's who you are. That's who God made you to be. So I live in a neighborhood, obviously in Price Hill, and I work in a context where there's a lot of black and brown neighbors. And on my street, we really are more the minority. And then every week, I go to the Hamilton County Juvenile Detention Center. And most of the time, sadly, probably 95% of the kids are African American. Come from a context where there's felonies involved and usually single-parent homes and all that. We are very different. We're very, very different. And here I am, I'm as white as they get, you know? And yet, the longer I'm there, the more I recognize they just want me to be me. I don't need to wear the newest pair of Jordan shoes. I don't need to look a certain way. I don't need to talk a certain way. It's like they just want me to be me. And I just want them to be them. With their background, with their story, just like I have my story. We work a lot with men and women in addiction. And it's alienating to tell a story that's not really yours. To try and make it more raw or to make it more whatever. I'm just going to be Chris. And the more that you understand that that is who God made you to be with your story, with your likes, with your dislikes, whatever it is, the more you can lean into being accepted for who you are and who God made you to be. And you don't have to be anybody else. Probably the first 3 years or so of me living in Price Hill, working in after-school programs, and I kid you not, everybody thought I was like one of the undercover cops in the neighborhood. I'm bald, and I'd wear darker clothes. And that alone, and I was new. So that alone, anytime the police showed up, they'd be like, that dude called him. We know he was the one. And I'm like, I promise I didn't do this. And I was doing everything I could to try and fit in, and eventually you get to the place like, I'm just going to be me. And I'm going to love my way into trust. I'm not going to be anybody different than who I am. I'm just going to be me. This is my son. You're accepted for who you are. The second part of that is, this is my son whom I love. Affection. There's acceptance and there's affection. We have an affectionate and passionate God. If you, as great as my parents were and as great as my dad was, and they're really good people, a lot of people who I talk to, and this is maybe more of a man thing, but it's a dad who provided for me but was emotionally distant. And that may not be your story, but at least it was for me. And I was 28, and I come home, and I'm sitting there. It's almost as if it had lied dormant in me. And I'm sitting down talking to my wife, Kelsey, and I say, I don't think my dad's ever told me he's proud of me. I cannot draw back on one story, not one, where my parents said, I'm so proud of you. They weren't touchers, and that's okay. Like, they just weren't physical affection people. But the more I'm like trying to walk with God, the more I say He is an affectionate Father who loves you. Just proud of you. And so it can be hard for some of us to step into this affection. Father, actually, I was in a Bible study with this girl, a friend of mine, and we started talking about this idea of God being Father. And I know this is actually can be a very touchy subject for some people. She grew up in a home with a single mother, and her mom was everything to her. And she, literally, she could not take this idea of God being Father, and she walked out. Couldn't take it, and for her, I think she has ended up leaving the faith. But I think it was a big step for her, not not drawing near. She could not get over that because of her earthly pains. My favorite, I'll show you a picture. One of my favorite all-time basketball players is a guy named Dennis Rodman. For those of you who don't know Dennis Rodman, check this out. Dennis Rodman was a very flamboyant, raw dude. As a matter of fact, he did not, for a couple of years out of high school, did not play basketball. He was found in an airport as a janitor. He grew 8 inches after high school, and a basketball scout found him and said, "Hey, why don't you come play for our team?" And that's how he went to a junior college and played basketball, and that's how he ended up making it to the NBA, which is a wild story. So Dennis Rodman, one of the reasons I love Dennis is just he's not that big, and yet he played like he was the baddest dude on the planet. Would kick, fight, scream, do anything. It was in your face and would not back down. I love that spirit. Just would not back down. And Dennis makes the Hall of Fame, and he makes this speech. If you get a chance to YouTube it, it's a little raw. I'm just going to let you know that because that's who Dennis is. But he gets the Hall of Fame, and you make your speech. And that's when you give, hey, I want to thank my coaches, and I want to thank my parents. And you go down the line, and he thanks these coaches and men in his life, and he gets to his family. And he says, I got my wife. My wife has had to be the husband and the wife. I've been a horrible dad. He did not have a dad. So he said, I didn't have a dad. And he gets to his mom, which for most kids that I work with, mom is queen. And so you're going to say something. He says, I hate to do this, but me and my mom don't have a great relationship. My mother worked 3 jobs to provide for us. And I respect her so much. She worked her butt off. My mom never hugged me because she didn't know how to hug me. She never said, I love you. She didn't know how to say, I love you. And I look at this Dennis Rodman, who's such an emotional, raw, amazing basketball player, one of the greatest ever. And that repeated cycle of a lack of affection has played over and over and over again in his life. This is my son, whom I love. He's affectionate for you. He loves you. He favors you. Can't wait to spend time with you. He loves you. I have a mentor of mine, his name is Wally Rendell. We were at Skyline down in Warsaw one day, and I don't even remember what I was talking about. I have no idea now. And I don't even remember what he said, but we're sitting at Skyline eating 3 ways or something because that's the best thing in the world there. And he just put his hand on my arm and said, it's all right. That little touch has burned a memory in my brain of someone who's just there for me. Touch goes a long way in affection. It's really easy if you're a parent to do that when your kids are young. It gets a lot harder when they get older. And maybe they still need it just as much. Finding ways to show affection. To embrace them and tell them how much you love them. Do people know that you like them, not just love them? That you're affectionate towards them. Last thing, this is my son, whom I love. With him, I'm well pleased. That's just affirmation. Do we find fault or joy in others? Are we critical or encouraging? Just make the assumption that most people you meet are under-encouraged. Most people you meet are under-encouraged. could use a word of joy today. Luke 15, this would be a really good, hey, if you wanted to sit on a scripture this week and start playing out the themes of, are you an orphan, or are you a son or daughter? Read that one. It's the prodigal son. And this, basically, I'll give you a really quick gist. Younger brother goes away, blows all the money and inheritance that he has. The older brother stays at home, and he kind of keeps it together. The younger brother comes back home, and he's got this speech he's going to make up, and he actually says, I'm going to come back as a servant, not as a son. I'm going to come back. I'm going to tell him that I screwed it up. I'm going to go home. And he's coming back, and the father doesn't even let him get his whole speech through. He embraces him. He's like, we're throwing a party. The servants go and get the food and kill the cow, and they're going to throw this huge party. And then all of a sudden, the older brother hears the party going on. He's like, what's going on here? He says, did you not hear your younger brother came back home? And they're throwing a party. And the father comes out, and he wants to speak to the older son. And the older son's like, I've been here the whole time keeping it together. I didn't screw this up. I didn't make a mistake. And I didn't get a party. I didn't get all these amazing celebration things going on. I didn't get that. And the father says, but you've been here with me the whole time. If you wanted it, all you had to do was ask. Both of them, in their own way, were living out as orphans, not as sons. Thinking that it was their performance, their behavior, keeping it together, or completely screwing it up was going to push them away or bring them closer to the Father, when in reality he's saying, I've been here the whole time. You're my son. This isn't about performance. This isn't about crossing all your T's and dotting all your I's. You're my son. You're my daughter. I love you. Let's throw the party. Because I thought you were dead, but you're alive. You were gone, and now you're home. Because you're embracing now the life of being a son of mine, not a servant. He's affectionate. He accepts. And he affirms. Affirmation and encouragement is a tool to destroy pride, if you're looking for it. In life, in your marriage, with your kids, whatever it is, encouraging others can destroy pride. No healthy culture is built on criticism, no wherever you go. Nobody wants to be criticized. Tough conversations just come from the bank of love that you've built up. There's this scripture, which I'll throw up here. It's in John 5. And Jesus says this. It's interesting. He says, Jesus gave them this answer. He says, very truly I tell you, the Son can do nothing by himself. He's referring to himself as the Son. He can do only what he sees his Father doing. Because whatever the Father does, the Son also does. Do you hear this intimacy? I'm walking with the Father. I'm so connected. I understand I'm a son or a daughter. I'm not some faraway spiritual servant. My feet don't hit the ground every day going, I'm going to do something amazing for God today. No, my feet hit the ground. I go, I'm loved. I'm loved by my Father. But whatever the Father does, the Son also does. For the Father loves the Son and shows him all he does. Yes, and he will show him even greater works than these, so that you will be amazed. Jesus knew exactly who he was. He embraced fully who he was, and he knew what his mission was about. And honestly, guys, how many people in your life do you know? They know exactly. They're so grounded in who they are. They're so confident in the love that the Father has for them. How many people do you really know? And it's no wonder Jesus could choose something that all of his closest disciples and friends were telling him not to do. It's no wonder that he could face rejection. It's no wonder that Jesus was able to work through and grieve through a couple of friends who were died. One of them brutally, his cousin, had his head cut off. And Jesus was able to grieve through that and still be fruitful. It's no wonder Jesus could resist the allure of power and of praise from others and still remain who he really was and not have to chase the next big thing. it's no wonder he could live his mission that he had from his Father all the way to death on a cross. Because he knew exactly who he was and where he came from. There's this book I want to give credit where credit's due. There's this book, and I'll show you the title of it. It's called From Spiritual Slavery to Sonship, by a guy by the name of Jack Frost. What a daggone name, right? Like, Jack Frost. Can't make that stuff up. Where a lot of these, some of these concepts I've just been wrestling with. And this has been a paradigm shifter for me, honestly. And I know it sounds so crazy to go, this paradigm shift is God loves me. But it is. And to go, okay, I'm loved. And I can just let me just sit in that for a minute. God loves me. And there's this chart that he's got in this book. I'm only pulling a few points out of this, but I wanted to show you this to juxtapose that of an orphan heart versus that of a son or daughter. And you can decide where you're at in this and where you could maybe grow or if you need to take a deeper step. An orphan heart sees God as a master. Feet hit the ground and they go, I'm going to do something awesome today. I got to obey. I got to do something big. I got to chase the next thing, whatever it is. The son or daughter just sees God as a loving father. Orphan heart sees himself as insecure, whereas a son or daughter has rest and peace. Orphan heart strives for praise, approval, and acceptance. A son or daughter just knows they're totally accepted by God and justified by grace. They live in that. An orphan heart has difficulty receiving correction, and their feelings are easily hurt. Whereas a son or daughter sees correction as a blessing so that your faults can be put to death. An orphan sees authority as a source of pain, they're distrustful of them, and they lack submission to authority. Whereas a son or daughter is respectful, honoring, and sees them as God's ministers for your good. No matter if it's a good boss or bad boss, doesn't matter. God's placed them there for your good. And an orphan feels like a servant or a slave, whereas a son or daughter, they just feel like a son or daughter. They've embraced that they are a son or a daughter. The gospel is you are adopted as a son or a daughter by a loving father who brings you into the kingdom. It is through the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. It is the gospel that you are adopted as sons and daughters. And it is that we find good news. You were brought into a new family, the family of the kingdom. The more that you embrace I'm a son or daughter, the more I think we enter into the goodness of the life Jesus promises. And I think that is nothing but good news. So what would it look like if you woke up every day with your feet hitting the ground with absolute confidence that you're loved by God? You woke up knowing, I am loved by God. I'm loved by my Father. He chooses you. He favors you. He's proud of you, and He can't wait to see you. And we are in the business of my Father's mission. I want to say this to you all as a church, and really the leadership of the church as well. You all over the past year have been on a big vision and big mission to bless this city and the people and area around you. I think it's $100,000 over the last 12 months, thousands of hours served, tons of just getting your hands dirty. And that is amazing. Just a few things. In August, a year ago, you guys bookended. You started with blocking our arts building. And I do want to say it was the most fruitful year in that building we've ever had. Seriously. More dance classes, more pottery studio stuff, more craziness all the time down at the arts. I say it's 4 floors of crazy because that's what it is. Than we've ever had. You guys kicked that off. And in October, you guys were with Young Life. In November, you were cleaning and painting at Western Hills Church of Christ, which I just want to pause there. I don't know other churches who go and serve other churches. I'm just being honest. Most of the time, it's competition. so amazing. This is incredible. For real, this is amazing. And I want to really give credit to, one, you all as a part of this family of Bridgetown Church of Christ, but I also want to say it to the elders and leaders here, this is not common. You all are under good leadership. This is amazing work. I'll keep going down this. You all did a Christmas giving tree. You all did a virtual bingo. How was that, by the way? Virtual bingo, is that fun? At the Hildebrand Nursing Home. You did Pie Day with Carson Elementary. Come on. And you did cleaning, painting with My Neighbor's Place. You all had a partnership with Maddie's House. And then you all, next week, are bookending all of this with another service day with Block Again in our brand new building. It's amazing. You all heard some of this, but we are, in Price Hill at least, we're probably now 33% Hispanic, 33% African American, 33% white, and probably over the next, I think, 5 to 10 years, we're going to be a majority Hispanic. It's that much immigration of people flooding in here, and it's coming everywhere. You all see it. And we were given this building on Glenway Avenue that was an older church that couldn't take care of the building anymore. And they said, hey, we'll give it to you if you guys decide to be a blessing to the neighborhood with it. And that's just what we do. It is probably a 15,000 square foot building that needs a little TLC. It's been vacant for the most part for 10 years. This building will host ESL classes, legal help for immigrants coming here to get on their feet. We have a business incubator that's going to be able to create businesses. You're 200% more likely as an immigrant to start your own business. So we want to help you get on your feet, get a good job, because they're working so daggone hard here. We'll have a church there. It'll have community spaces, youth empowerment classes. It will be booked out. Hope maybe a product line that will be able to create jobs in the neighborhood. It will be able to give jobs to people so they can come to work within a walking distance. This is the vision. We're at the very beginning, but you get to kick that off again. You're in the business of your Father. You guys have been such a blessing to this city, to me, to our neighborhood, to the West Side. You are good news because you're reflecting your Father. And I want to praise you for that. I know the Father's in the business of giving himself up for others. I know the Father's in the business of big visions where a group of people live generously and serve courageously. I know the Father's in the business of welcoming in strangers and being the first face, smiling face it for somebody who's moving into a new neighborhood and it's scary. I know the Father's in the business of fighting for your marriage. I know the Father's in the business of saying yes to playing with your kids more often. I know the Father is pleased when you come under someone else's authority for growth. I know that the Father is pleased with you. A couple things. There is, on your way home, you could listen to a song that's called No Longer Slaves. Pull up Spotify, wherever you listen to music. It's a song called No Longer Slaves. It's really based out of a scripture in Romans 8. It says you were adopted as sons and daughters. You're not a slave. You're a son and daughter. You could listen to that on the way home. There's a movie. I'm going to say it's a little rough around the edges, but it's a movie called A Man Named Otto. Has Tom Hanks. Incredible movie. Just about a neighbor who loves somebody who's going through a tough time and lets them know that they're cared for, loved, and seen. You don't have to accept all of it. Just so you know, if you watch it, go home, watch that. And I want to end with this. If you have communion, and we're going to do something a little different. If you would stand, please. And take the communion out. Don't take it yet, but put it in your hand. Jesus says, I'm going to teach you how to pray. And you guys have probably heard this a bajillion times, but just reflect on the very first part of this together. He says, Our Father who's in heaven, our Father. who's in heaven, holy is your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever and ever. Amen. Take the body of Christ, eat it. Our Father, His blood shed for you. In the name of our Father. I love you guys. I'm grateful for you. Thank you for being a blessing.